Welcome back to Soul Ramble Mode. I've got a couple obligatory things that I need to say at the beginning, so if you want to get right to the topic, skip about 2 minutes ahead. I'm sure future Soul will put some kind of timestamp in the video somewhere. Okay, with that being said, two things. One, just so that everybody's aware, again, I have an internal schedule now. Wednesdays are going to be our regularly scheduled, fully edited videos as per usual. Thursdays and Fridays are going to be Soul Ramble Mode videos. If that's something that you've enjoyed, make sure to do me the greatest favor of dropping a like, a comment, and maybe a subscription if you could consider it, and maybe help by hyping the video, because doing that stuff helps the channel immensely, and it makes it so that I can get out more content to you guys more consistently, and it just helps, just get the channel outreached and stuff like that. I was hoping that maybe around, February or something like that, maybe by that time we could maybe hit 11K, so that by the time we do, start getting more news and updates and an official release date for Pokemon Winds and Waves, I could set up that giveaway for you guys. And the better the channel's looking, the more copies I could do giveaways for. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully that's a little bit incentive for you, and it's a little bit incentive for me to keep going, right? So again, doing all that helps out the channel immensely. I appreciate all the support that we've been getting on the channel for the last couple of days. I thank every single one of you so much. You have no idea how much fun it's been to do this kind of content again here, right? So let's keep this up. And again, if you guys want to hear me talk about anything that's not Pokemon related, make sure to follow along on my my second channel, Soul Side Quest, where I do gaming of all types. We talk about every other thing that usually isn't Pokemon related. And if you want to just keep up with me, make sure to join up in the Discord below, right? Okay, that all being said, we've gotten everything out the way. Cool. Let's talk about today's topic, right? So something that's been on the back of my mind for a very long time, right? This kind of bleeds into two things, actually. Firstly, the situation with Pokemon when it comes to making actual decisions, right? One of the things I feel that Pokemon has been lacking for so incredibly long was the feel of a true RPG and making actual decisions that affect, you and everybody around you. Being able to make decisions that, develop characters differently and that change up the story and stuff like that. I feel like that should be a main prime mechanic in Pokemon games, because I feel like the concept now, especially now that we're in the modern era where we're still creating our own characters. Like, yeah, technically the characters that we are playing as have canonical names and lives and stuff like that. The way that these games have been developed and shown off, it feels like we should more than be at the point where we are carving our own path as Pokemon trainers. Like, I don't feel like we should be, limited to just one, direct story. You know what I'm saying? There's an entire world that they have yet to fully take advantage of. And it really, really sucks that we don't have the opportunity to, chase something else, right? Because here's the problem, right? As, it's stated in the title, the career situation, if that's what I end up calling it, we are forced into one career, right? And that is being the champion, okay? Now, here's my thing. I understand to an extent, for the most part, that having us go for, being the champion of the given region that we're exploring is the best way to progress the general story, right? Having it so that, we're, going badge to badge, and then, oh, major event is happening, and then badge to badge, and oh, major event that's developing the story, and then we eventually beat the, the major bad guy, right? Here's my thing. I feel like we could go about that in a lot of different ways that doesn't necessarily have to be, just strictly the gym storyline, right? And I feel like this is a much more prevalent thought more than ever because of the triple storyline avenue that we were introduced to in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, in which, yeah, we still have the gym storyline as per usual, and that's still the main thing that progresses the story, true enough, but we still have our alternative storylines with Arven and Penny, where we are fighting off Titan Pokemon to get, sandwich ingredients to heal, Arven's Pokemon, and then Penny's storyline with Team Starfall and trying to, help these very lost students, find their way back to school and stuff like that, right? No matter how you feel about those storylines, I know it's a very hit or miss situation with a lot of people, but the long and short of it is, it was refreshing to have more than one storyline to follow than as opposed to just the gym story. Like, it was such a nice change of pace to have something like that. And I feel like it's just one of those things that gave me a tease into what it could maybe be like if we had the opportunity to carve out our own path as Pokemon trainers, right? Because here's my thing. It's always been strange to me that the championship is the only career path that have ever been allowed to take, like, fully, that progresses the story, right? Because here's my thing. There have been plenty of other Pokemon careers within the franchise that have been made viable to pursue as a mainstay like career for Pokemon, right? And I feel like, all of these things could easily lead into a main story involving the bad guy. I feel like it's one of those, or, the major antagonist, whatever that so happens to be, right? Or antagonistic force even. I feel like we could find ways to weave these storylines into one, right? I think back to, Cyberpunk 2077, how you had the 3 different storylines. And I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out here. You had the 3 different storylines that you could start with. You could be the Arasaka shill. You could be you could be from the, what is that called, the Badlands or whatever that's called, and then you could be like a street kid. You had 3 different starting options, right? And no matter what you picked, all it did was change what kind of personality V had starting off, going into the game, so that your responses and how, what kind of things you could get out of people could change throughout your playthrough depending on what you started with. But no matter what, all of those storylines converged into the main storyline in some way, shape, or form. And I feel like we easily could definitely find a fun and unique and interesting way to do that with other career paths within Pokemon. I can't believe, wow, what a stumble that was. Right? So, for example, right? I know a lot of people, me included, have been disappointed for a while now that contests haven't been a thing for a very, very long time now, right? For whatever reason, and I don't really count Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. They had to be there because Diamond and Pearl had contests, right? But post that, we haven't had contests in a Pokemon game since Generation 4, which was ages ago. Why? I don't know, but it's genuinely absurd. I mean, obviously the same things apply to the remakes for Generation 3 where they were introduced, but whatever. You get the point that I'm trying to get at here. Pokemon contests aren't a thing for some reason, which is very strange to me because people liked that mechanic. It was a great, phenomenal way to spend time. It was great extra content that people could spend a lot of time with. It was just like perfect. Not perfect per se. Obviously, there definitely could have been some improvements and a lot of elements that could have made it even more engaging, but the general concept of Pokemon contests, people enjoyed, to the point they were even, utilized as a hefty aspect in the anime too. Like, May wanted to be a contest star. So it's very strange to me that, we don't really have that option. I feel like that's easily one of those things that people could enjoy more about Pokemon outside of the battling. There's a lot of people out there, they're cool with Pokemon as an RPG, but I feel like they would definitely love to delve more into the contest aspects, right? And they haven't been able to do that since Generation 3, Generation 4, since they've been gone. Right? So they don't really get to, pursue that. And that really, really sucks for them, because I know that they would definitely get a kick out of having, contests be a permanent thing. Like, oh yeah, I can't wait to get all these new Pokemon, these new cute Pokemon within this new game. And then I can, utilize that to championship, max rank my, my contest rank and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's something people could definitely get into. And it would be even more interesting if being a contest star is something that you could delve more into as a major mainline career within the game. And while you're working towards that, there's stuff going on outside. Now, obviously, that one's a little bit harder to meld into a main storyline because you're not Pokemon battling. You are, showing off cute Pokemon. But obviously, there are strong Pokemon out there that also have phenomenal designs that could be considered cute that you could utilize for, battle as well, to hold, to take down the enemy team, like, my Milotic and stuff like that, or Lapras, right? So I just feel like that's one of those things that people should be able to pursue and things like that. Or even, hell, like, maybe make it so that there's a completely different antagonist entirely. That's, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot to play around with there, right? Another aspect is Pokemon Rangers, right? Because here's the thing, right? We we were introduced to the concept of Pokemon Rangers as, like, trainers and stuff like that within the games, but they inevitably ended up getting their own spin-off, which elevated the concept of Pokemon Rangers to new heights. The movie was phenomenal. The Pokemon Ranger games are fantastic. They're so much fun, to the point where people are just like, it's kind of weird that we don't utilize this as a major aspect within Pokemon anymore, like, at all. They're just kind of like not a thing, and it's just kind of weird. Like, I feel like that's a very, like, viable route for a Pokemon career. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, I don't think they would completely eradicate or, like, meld the Pokemon Ranger, like, mechanics into mainline Pokemon or anything like that, but there could be some aspects of it where you're going out on, instead of you're just taking on the gym challenge and stuff like that, you are taking on missions, harder and harder missions. Maybe you're kind of this is probably going to be a reach, but has anybody played maybe like Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, where you're part of the organization and you're taking on like daily missions and stuff like that? Or something along the lines of what we had in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, where you are, as a Pokemon Ranger, you're part of a guild and stuff like that, and you're taking on multiple missions and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't have to change all that much from what we know with Pokemon battling and stuff like that. You can still be a very strong Pokemon Ranger and still, meld that into the main story and stuff like that. I just feel like there's a lot of aspects about a Pokemon Ranger that would fit very well into a mainline story. Hell, I mean, you could probably focus an entire Legends game on the prospect of being like a Pokemon Ranger, if we're being honest. Like, I feel like that'd be really, really cool. That could be one way to get your rank up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's a phenomenal excuse to do. I don't know. I just feel like that's easily one of those things that could be melded into mainline Pokemon more as a primary career, as opposed to just being a champion, or, a Pokemon Ranger is definitely more interesting than just being, common police or whatever within the Pokemon realm, right? So I just thought about that, and I feel like that's something that could be really, really interesting, right? And then another concept is, the Pokestar Studio route, where you could become a famous, actor alongside your Pokemon and stuff like that. And that could be a viable career too. You're, making sure that you have the right lines for your Pokemon and stuff like that. And you're still, doing Pokemon battles on screen, and you're still, what I'm saying? Like, you're making sure that your Pokemon have the right outfits, and you're directing them properly to do certain things to, get your rank up in that regard, to become more and more famous. You're getting, deals for shows and deals for movies and stuff like that, because, you're on the screen, you're on camera all the time, and in a way you can find this a way to meld this into the mainline story too. A lot of people are, chanting your name like, go train or whatever, and you're taking down the big bad because everybody's rooting for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just stuff like that that I feel like could be really, really fun as an aspect, because they just didn't want to utilize this concept for whatever reason, right? Hell, another avenue I just thought of off rip right now, Pokeathlon, like, literally a Pokemon sports. You know what I'm saying? Being a major, like, a Pokemon coach for sports, right? Building up your team to participate in major league Pokemon sports that aren't just Pokemon battling and stuff like that. That's super viable. Are you kidding? Pokemon athletes? Come on now. That's not crazy. That's not an insane thing. That's a real ass career. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that would definitely be another aspect that could be fun to pursue. I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of different avenues to go about how you can pursue your own Pokemon journey, right? Maybe you could do multiple, right? At the very least, at the very, very, very least, right? It's fine if we want to just keep the generic, 8 gym badge of, major antagonist fight and championship battles, whatever as they are. But the fact that none of these other things are just here anymore kind of sucks. It's really, really sad, because I feel like these are concepts that could blend really well into open world games like Scarlet and Violet, like Winds and Waves, that could make it so that, there's more to do, right? There's other careers to pursue, right? Maybe I feel like doing these things could also serve as phenomenal post game too, right? Like, all right, yeah, I've beaten the championship. You know, I'm Pokemon champion. The bad guy's done. I ain't got to worry about anything else. I helped the professor out with his Pokédex. Now I want to be a Pokemon Ranger. I want to go get my rank up. I want to do these cool missions, you know, fighting bad guys or, you know, hunting down, you know, bad Pokemon that are doing harm to the environment and stuff like that. I want to be a contest star. I want to just grab all my cutest Pokemon and get my rank up that way. I just feel like they serve as phenomenal content for people. It's just weird to me that they just don't feel like these things can or should exist. Like, even if they were to add some of this stuff in through updates or through DLC, I'd be okay with that at the very least. But I don't know. I just feel like, you know, because we have a major post-game issue when it comes to modern Pokemon now, where there's almost nothing to do until we get the DLC, and that is that is meant to be our post-game. That's meant to serve as our post-game. That's where all the extra content comes in. Why? Why can't we have it so that we have actual post-game through these other means, and then when we get the DLC, we actually have some new stuff to look forward to that isn't what we're already doing, right? We're paying a lot of money for these games. I feel like it's not that crazy for me to want a little bit more in that regard as far as options, as far as content, as far as choices. And, you know, I've already talked about like the morality system potentially being a thing. I mean, we could talk about it again if anybody's interested and doesn't know what I'm talking about, but you know, I just feel like, you know, being able to make choices in Pokemon should definitely be more of a thing. And at the very least, these things that they've introduced, there's no reason for them to be gone. They should be getting consistently, you know, updated and upgraded throughout every generation of Pokemon to make them even more interesting to pursue. And I feel like they could serve as phenomenal content, and they could just be present. They don't have to be all that crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about a little bit, and I feel like maybe down the line we could pursue something along these lines to make things a little bit more interesting. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. I think I've said my piece. Again, you know, as per usual, likes, comments, subscribes. If you wouldn't mind too much, again, it helps with the channel immensely, and it definitely, if we could reach that 11K, oh my God, the giveaway is super on. So help me out, I'll help you out. So, all right. That all being said, I'm passing the mic over in your direction. I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you agree that we do have a career situation in modern Pokemon, that these things should definitely be viable careers, or at least, you know, more things to do within Pokemon? We should have access to contests, to Pokestar Studios, to being a Pokemon Ranger, and to like real Pokemon sports. These things should all be viable within modern Pokemon. Or are you on the opposing side? You're not really feeling this concept. These are things that don't really need to be there. The champion storyline as is within every Pokemon game is totally fine, and we don't really need to change that up all that much anyway. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed it. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm Gonzo. Thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!